Hey guys! Alright, so we are going to continue notes on World War I today, and then we will finish them up on Monday. What we're going to talk about today is the U.S. finally joining the war and some problems that were going on in Russia. So this is where we left off. We talked about the Eastern Front, which was the land in between Germany and Russia where they fought. And we talked about some of the problems. So the Russian army, they had more than 1 million men in their army, but they didn't have enough food. They were starving. They didn't have modern weapons. So it was not going very well for them. And this leads to the Russian Revolution, which is what we're going to start talking about today. So in Russia, they're, along with having high casualties from the war, so a lot of people, their family members, their brothers, their fathers had gone off to fight and they got killed. Along with that, there were also shortages of bread and grain back home, so people back home were starving. The government started taking land from the farmers, so they're losing their land, and men are being drafted into war. Now, when you are drafted into a war, that means you are told you have to fight. So men are being taken from their homes and forced to join the army to fight, even though they don't want to, and they're leaving behind their family to fend for themselves. So these are some of the problems going on in Russia, and this is what eventually causes them to revolt and start the Russian Revolution. They start holding protests and everything. So eventually, people start to turn on the Tsar and revolt. Now, this is the Tsar, Nicholas II. A Tsar is basically a name for like a king. He was the king of Russia. And here he is right here goofing off. But this is Nicholas II. So eventually the people start to blame him for all their problems. And he wasn't the best ruler. He was a family guy. He was really focused on his family. He wasn't so much focused on the Russian people. So he could have done a lot better. But they wanted him gone. They thought, he's not helping us. We just need to get rid of him. So Nicholas II is who the Tsar is. And these are just some pictures. So they would take portraits of Nicholas II and they would burn them. This is part of a statue that they took the head off. Now, eventually, Nicholas resigns in 1917. He's like, you know what? The Russian people don't want me. Okay. And also the army was starting to turn on him too. So Nicholas resigns in 1917. The monarchy in Russia officially ends. And when this happens, Russia decides to leave the war. So the war is almost over anyway. It ends in 1918. But Russia decides to leave the war because they're losing far more men and they're not really gaining much from the war. So Nicholas resigns. But what happens to Nicholas? So whenever a king or a queen resigns, you kind of have to figure out, well, what do you do with them? Because there are always going to be some people who try and reinstate them, who try and get them back into power. And a lot of Russians are worried that Nicholas was going to try and get back into power. So he might have resigned now, but he might try and become king again later. So people are getting really worried about that. So after Nicholas resigns, him and his family, so this is his wife and these are his children, they are basically locked up for months and months, almost a year. They're locked up in this house, this old house. And they're told, we'll figure out what to do with you later. We're going to let you leave. We just haven't figured out where yet. So you just got to hang tight, stay here. Now, Nicholas had one son, and that was this little boy right here. And his name was Alexei. And Alexei was born with a disorder called hemophilia, which means his blood didn't clot. So like if he got a paper cut, whereas our fingers might bleed for like a tiny second and then it stops, his would keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. It doesn't clot. It doesn't stop bleeding like ours normally would. So he was very sick all the time. And before all this, Nicholas was trying to figure out ways to help his son. So here's another little family portrait. Now, Nicholas decides to hire this lovely man right here called Rasputin. Believe it or not, people in Russia thought he was attractive during this time. Yeah, he looks creepy. But Rasputin was a healer. He was almost thought to be like a doctor, kind of. Like he used mysticism and magic to heal. And so Nicholas hired Rasputin to help heal Alexei. And Rasputin became part of the family. Nicholas's wife became really good friends with him. Like, Nicholas turned to him for advice a lot. Excuse me. And the Russian people didn't like Rasputin either. They thought that he was corrupting the king and queen, that he wasn't helping with anything, he was giving them bad advice. So they wanted him gone too, along with the king and queen. So when the king resigns, obviously he's separated from Rasputin. And the king, the Tsar Nicholas II, and his family are held in this room right here. This is a basement room in the house. So they were told, after almost a year of being held prisoner, they were told, you know what? Okay, we're going to let you leave Russia. You got to go to another country, but we're going to let you leave. So pack a suitcase and you can go. Now, the women, they ended up sewing tons of jewels and diamonds and money into their clothes, which is a very common practice back then if you were trying to hide something. They would sew it into their clothes because they wanted to take their priceless items with them. So they're told, all right, you're going to leave, get your suitcase. We're going to let you leave in the middle of the night. We're going to escort you out. Well, they escort them to this room, and then they shoot the entire family with machine guns. The children, the dad, the mom, kill the whole family with machine guns. Now, they're not, in this picture, they don't have machine guns. They use machine guns. It was extremely violent. The family thought they were going to get away, and then they end up all getting killed. And the Russian government didn't tell anyone what happened. They denied it. They were like, the family must have escaped. Oh no. They pretended like they didn't know anything that happened until many, many, many years later. Although people highly suspected the entire family got killed. Now, what happened to Rasputin? This lovely individual right here. Well, they wanted him dead too. So they invited him to a dinner, and they tried to poison him at the dinner. They gave him wine that was poison. Well, it didn't work. He's like, whatever, it's not bothering me. So then they decided to shoot him 3 times in the chest and the head. And they think he's dead finally, but then he bounces back up and tries to get away. And they're like, are you kidding me? He's still alive? The poison didn't work. The shooting didn't work. What are we going to do? So they threw his body into an icy river, and finally he dies. He drowns in the icy river. So Nicholas's entire family gets killed, along with one of his very close friends, Rasputin, who looks very scary. Okay, so that was the Russian Revolution. So those are the problems that are going on out east. And this is the room where the family was killed, so you can see all the damage the bullet holes did to the walls. All right, so now we're going to talk about why did America join the war? Well, part of it was because Russia had just left the war, and they realized, if we want this to go the way we want, we might have to help out a little more. But also, one of the reasons was because Germany started targeting civilian ships with their U-boats. So they would shoot or torpedo ships with civilians, with passengers, with their submarines, which is something you are not supposed to do. One of the rules of war is that you don't target civilians. Now, people don't listen to that all the time, but you're supposed to. Second thing, so in 1915, a year into the war, Germany sinks a ship called the Lusitania. And the Lusitania is a British passenger ship. So right here. So it was a ship with a lot of passengers. It had Americans on it. It had British people from all over. And Germany torpedoed the ship. They said, they were carrying weapons on that ship, so we're just going to get rid of it. And England said, no, we weren't. This was a passenger ship. We had passengers. And they got really upset with Germany because they said, this is crossing a line. And America got upset too. So this newspaper says, Lusitania sunk by a submarine, probably 1,000 dead, twice torpedoed off the Irish coast, sinks in 15 minutes. Now, they later found out that there were weapons in the bottom of the boat. Even though England tried to deny it, they were hiding weapons in the bottom of the boat because they thought Germany wouldn't attack if they knew there were people, civilians on the boat. They were wrong. But there were definitely weapons in the bottom of the boat. So Germany was right about that. Now, eventually, they said, all right, you cannot do this anymore. We gave Germany an ultimatum. So Germany's like, fine, we won't target civilians anymore. So then we move on to the third reason America joined the war, which was the Zimmermann telegram. So the Zimmermann telegram was sent from Germany to Mexico, and it was urging Mexico to attack the U.S., saying, if you go and invade the U.S., when we win this war, we will give you back so much land that you lost to the U.S. So we'll give you back all this land. Now, the telegram was originally in code, so the U.S. had to decode the telegram. But once they figured out what it said, this really damaged relations between the U.S. and Germany. And we didn't send them as many supplies as we had been before. And this really gets a lot of people in the U.S. Get really angry, and they want to go to war. They want to go to war against Germany because of this. So this right here, it says, join with Germany and you get a bit of the United States. So this is a German soldier, and you know that because of the pointy helmet. And you have a Mexican in a sombrero, and he's saying, you should join with us because we'll give you land if we win. Okay, so fourth reason America joined the war is because they're influenced by propaganda. So propaganda is when you spread beliefs to cause damage to an opposing cause. So when you post stuff in newspapers or magazines, and you really, really exaggerate it because you want someone to feel a certain way, that is propaganda. So this right here is propaganda. You are trying to make people feel bad for this family right here. The husband has to go away to war. You're trying to encourage people to spend money, to donate money to the cause. So things that are very common in propaganda. So emotional appeal. That means you want to make people feel bad for you. You want to make them feel sorry so that they want to do something. Name calling. In a lot of propaganda posters, they are really mean. Like they're calling, maybe calling Germans or calling British people or calling Mexicans these really mean names. Patriotic appeal. So that means you want to make people be like, if you're a true American, you would do this. Half truth and lies. So propaganda, you're exaggerating a lot of stuff. Not all of it's true. Usually have catchy slogans. So I have some examples of propaganda posters up in my classroom, actually. I have a Captain America poster, if y'all remember that one. But I also have some other ones from World War I and World War II, if y'all remember those. Sometimes there's humor, and they always have these big pictures. So these are more propaganda. So this one says, there is still a place in the line for you. Will you fill it? So trying to encourage you to join. This one right here says, will you fight now or wait for this? So they're trying to make people worry. Like, if you don't join the German army, these people with the pointy helmets, they're going to kill your family. Just like this. So if you don't fight now, this will be your family. So they're trying to scare people. They're trying to appeal to them emotionally. All right. And last thing, the fifth reason that the U.S. joins the war is because Germany starts targeting civilian ships again. So finally, on April 6, 1917, the U.S. declares war, and we officially join the Allies. So we are going to stop here. We will finish with the end of the war and the treaty that ended it on Monday. I promise it'll be a lot shorter than this PowerPoint. It's not too much. Okay, I will see you on Monday.